Hey, this is Steve Halleck, and I'm coming back with another TickTocking podcast. As always, you can find me at Steve Halleck on Instagram. Website is TickTocking.com. YouTube/TickTocking, although I guess a lot of you are just watching this there. And the podcasts go out on iTunes and Stitcher and all your favorite podcast apps if you want to listen in the car or while you're working out or whatever. Please hit subscribe. Send things to your friends. I'm trying to make more and more of these, and it just helps when I have a nice positive feedback loop of people actually caring that I'm doing it. Helps me take some time out of my day. So without further ado, let's talk some indie watches here. First up, I want to address or talk briefly about the new MB&F, the Thunderdome. So this came out yesterday, and a lot of people have asked me what my thoughts are on it. And I have to say, I haven't seen one in person, unfortunately, yet. Hopefully sometime Max will swing through Los Angeles and I'll get to get my hands on it. But from the pictures and from the sort of idea of it, I love it. I totally love it. I think it's awesome. The super fast multi-axis tourbillon, if you guys haven't seen this watch, please go check it out, Google it, whatever. I'll see if I can throw up a picture here on YouTube. But basically, it's a legacy machine, kind of. It's in the same type of case as the ladies' watch from last year, but the case is bigger. I think it's 44 or 44 and a half, but very, very thin. And then on top, you have a big dome. And in the back of the dome, you have this huge multi-axis tourbillon that's incredibly fast. I think it's 3 axes. One is maybe 8 seconds, 15 seconds, and 20 seconds or something. So it's really going. And then in front of that, you have the time display, which is the traditional kind of LM round enamel dial with the blue hands time display, and it's at an angle. So it would kind of be a driver's watch. Ultimately, I'm sure you can read it, at this sort of angle. Anyway, I love it. I think it's very, very cool. I love the sort of city under a dome type of metropolis-y vibe to the thing. And but the thing that I really like the most is I feel like Max, MB&F and Max have kind of gone back to their roots on this piece and are really pushing the watchmakers forward. So a lot of the press and discussion is around Eric Coudray, who did the multi-axis tourbillon, and Kari Voutilainen, who did the dial and oversees the finishing. And I really like this turn from MB&F. MB&F started when it kind of grew out of the Opus series, which Max did at Harry Winston, and really put a lot of independent watchmakers on the map. And MB&F started with a kind of similar idea of putting the watchmakers and everybody involved in the project forward. And then kind of slowly became its own brand and its own identity. And the releases started to be more just, this is the new MB&F versus this is the new MB&F and look who made it come to be. And I feel like that was probably a useful thing to do in the growing of the brand and the cementing of the brand itself as an important thing. However, I think that now is a particularly good time for MB&F to once again put these independent watchmakers up on a pedestal and start giving a little bit more of the shine to them again. And this, I think, is going to perfectly dovetail into what I'm going to talk about next. But I think the world is very much ready for independent watches and independent watchmakers right now. I think this is going to be another kind of golden age of this sort of stuff. And I think it's smart for MB&F, not only smart for them, but good for all of us if they use all of the cachet that they, and I as my small part of it, have helped build up over the last decade and a half to help grow these independent watchmakers again. So I think that it only makes MB&F look better to be highlighting these guys and working with them and showing the best of the best that watchmaking has. So I really appreciated that. I really look forward to seeing these pieces in the reel. I'd love to see the tantalum one with the aventurine dial. Sounds awesome. But bravo to MB&F here, and bravo to Max, who makes it look easy. But oof, it's a hard job. What they're doing is really, really hard. The amount of new watches, new movements, the risks that they take. Everybody takes it for granted, but after being inside, I can tell you it is a lot of really, 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 really hard work, and it's a difficult job. And that's evidenced by the fact that you don't really see many other indie brands doing quite as good a job as MB&F does. So again, hats off to the team. Congratulations on that one. Now, another big thing that happened is this resonance at auction in Hong Kong sold for over $250,000, which is complete bananas insanity. So how could I not address this, right? I've bought and sold maybe as many of these early resonances as anybody on the planet. I was telling people for years and years that the earliest pieces were the most beautiful and the best, and yet there was like no premium in them for a really long time. Resonances were like 35 to 45 grand, and it didn't really matter if it was a really early one or a little bit later one. They were just kind of the same, and that's just what it was. And I've owned some really spectacular ones. But in the last couple of years, people have been flocking to these earlier dial pieces, and this was a pretty early one that sold there. And the premiums have just been going up and up. So they were maybe a $60,000 watch for a while. And then I thought, I have a lot of people that have requested an early resonance right now. I probably have easily 15, 20 people in my books that have written me looking for these watches. So I knew they were desirable, but a lot of times people want a watch, but they all want to pay the same price, right? I get 15 people who want, I don't know, say like a Submariner or something. I don't sell those, so I'll use that as a safe thing. But they all want to pay 8 grand, right? It's not like 2 of them want to pay 25 grand. So I knew that the watch would be kind of hot. I knew that it would do well. I think auction is one of these, you can't really mark a market by what happens in an auction like this. People go wild, and you're never going to find, this one sold at $250. If you found another one and you offered it to me or a bunch of other dealers, there's no way they're going to pay you 200 grand for that watch. It's just, it's just impossible. They're not stably worth that much right now, or at least if they are, they need to prove themselves quite a bit more. So I don't know exactly what happened to make this go wild. I bid on the watch. I think my bid all in was right just under 100 grand. And I thought I had a really good shot of getting it. I thought I bid really strong. So to see it go for, 2.5 to 3 times that is pretty crazy. However, I think that it leads into the next discussion, which I touched on before, which is that I really think that this is the time for independent watches. You finally have a kind of a perfect confluence of events. The big brands have been overproducing for so long now that people are finally realizing that these watches are not that special. And the way the media is currently really gives a useful leg up, or at least an equalizer to these indie brands. The big thing forever is that these independent brands, they have basically zero marketing budget. If they have any, it is totally infinitesimal versus a bigger brand. And so people just don't know about them, right? There might be a lot of people who want an indie watch, but they don't even know they exist. And then the second challenge is that there's this perceived issue of resale value or liquidity, and that may scare people off also. But I think history is now starting to prove that that is kind of a myth. This Resonance is a perfect example of it. All the early Journes, if you look at the actual history of good indie watches, there's always been shitty indie brands, and they come and they go. And if you're unlucky enough to own one of these, and you could really get hurt. But if you look at the good ones that have real established figures and important watchmakers as part of them, the stuff that I primarily sell, Urwerk, MB&F, Vianney Halter, Kari Voutilainen, Philippe Dufour, I'm going to forget a million people, but De Bethune, Grubel Forsey, on and on. Look at my website, Roger Smith, Akrivia now, Romain Gauthier. You look at these guys, and the watches have been very stable at their values. Now, if you go from percentage from retail, it may not be so great on all the models on actual first resale. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but the main one is that indie watches don't really fit well in the multi-brand retail game. So retailers don't sell them that well because it takes specialized skill, and most of these salespeople just don't have it, right? So it's easy for them to sell a Royal Oak that's in their showcase because people come in looking for it already. The job that I do to sell independent watches is a very specialized job. I have 15 to 18 years of expertise and experience in the area, and I'm really good at it and good at my job. So you just don't find one of me behind the counter at every retailer across the world. So they get inventory, and the brands use the retail network because they kind of have to, or at least they did have to. But they end up selling them fairly discounted depending on what the model is or whatever. So you're kind of already at, I don't know, between 10 and 35 off on brand new models. And so in any case, the new to next buyer might not be the best, but when you look at pre-owned prices in good brands, they've been incredibly, incredibly stable. I sell almost all of the watches that I sell, I'm selling at the same prices or more as I have for a long time. So none of these good models have really tanked. And it's nice because you also keep the main speculators out of this market. So what you've seen now with Nautilus shot up, and now it's pulling back. It's definitely much harder to sell a Nautilus right now than it was 6 months ago, and prices have come down with it. Prices have come down more on Nautili in the last 6 months than they have on any of the good indie watches that I sell in over a decade. So when you're not playing this boom and bust roller coaster cycle, and you've got actually good stuff, you have this stable platform, maybe a little bit of growth, maybe down here, maybe whatever, and then occasionally you have the really good models like an early Resonance or Tourbillon Journe that just skyrocket. But you've seen that a lot now. That's becoming a rule and not an exception. You've had it with Journe. Vianney Halter watches are 3-4 times what they ever were. Roger Smith are all above retail. Philippe Dufour sell at 5 times what they originally cost. I think Kari Voutilainen very soon is going to prove to be one of the great bargains around, and his watches are going to start to skyrocket as soon as people realize just how special they are. And so you take all of that combined with the fact that you can actually find these indie watchmakers and you can find data on them now without having to do an extreme deep dive. It used to be that the only way you'd ever find them is by digging through a forum like The Purist or something like that. But now you go on Instagram and you see, you see a lot of Paddock, you see a lot of AP, you see a lot of whatever, but you probably see as much or more MB&F than you do Gérard Perregaux or Ulysse Nardin or, you know, a lot of these fairly big brands. And so it really normalizes the indie watchmakers and these independent watches, and it brings them to a much wider group of people. And that group of people are generally now people like me, who are, a generation past what were the watch buyers when I started this. You know, when I started in the early 2000s, it was like me as a young guy, and then a bunch of like 60-year-old conservative doctors who were never going to be into most of this stuff. But now there's a lot of younger people. There's, I'm 37, in this sort of millennial, Gen Y, Gen X type of range. We're a lot less brand conscious, a lot less searching for luxury. There's a lot of people who want the real deal. They've realized they've been lied to by these big companies' marketing departments for a long time. And when they think they're getting a really special thing, they're actually not. And they need to seek out these smaller, more boutique firms to get the product that they really thought that they were getting all along. So I think that all of these things are coming together, kind of the right time in terms of the consumer, the actual ability to reach those consumers, and the track record now of, I think that the real indie thing basically started in the very late 90s and maybe peaked or had some sort of peak at around 2006 to then 2012 with the big dip in between, but a lot of creativity in there. And so we're like around 10 to 20 years into this whole thing, and we're starting to build a pretty good historical record of how all of this stuff goes, that it is supported by the brands for a long time, that it does actually resell, that a lot of the stuff does actually go up in value, that a lot of the stuff does become sort of unfindable eventually and just sits on everybody's grail lists for a long time, and that this is the area with the real innovation and the real special stuff as compared to all of this over dumping of just product that's just made to churn these companies' bottom lines every quarter so their CEOs can keep their jobs. So I think all that is happening, and we're going to start to see it more and more in the market. I've talked recently with several dealers who have said, Steve, you've been in the exact right place for a long time. And they're either trying to move more into this area, or they have just kind of, they don't have the knowledge on it, and they are never going to move here. But at least they realize that this is a really good place to be right now, and a lot of collectors are jumping in to their first indie watches, and there's a lot of really good stuff out there. So anyway, it makes me happy because this is my entire thing. This is the reason why I'm in this business. It's a good, fun business. I like my job, but in terms of the kind of deeper meaning and the reason why I do these podcasts and I do my videos is because I really believe that these kinds of watches are important, and that a lot of the other stuff is very much not important, and that the world would be a better place if money was moved from that stuff into this stuff. So anyway, it's been a pleasure chatting for a little bit. This one got a little bit long, so I'll cut it here. These are all topics I'm going to get into quite a bit more as we go. These are sort of the big ideas. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'm going to try to come back soon. All right, thanks.